Welcome to Tyrone Tangata-Makiri.
Love it, love it. Kia ora. Awesome. Cool. So, tēnā koutou. Kua hui mai nei. E mihi ana ki ngā mana whenua. Ko whakarongarua te maunga, ko te koro te awa, ko ngā pui te iwi, no horike me rarotonga ahau. Kei te noho au kei Tāmaki Makaurau ki te rāwhiti, ko Teri Tangata tōku pāpā, ko Christina Makiri tōku mama, ko Tyrone Tangata-Makiri tōku ingoa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So, kia ora, kia orana, and in my other native language, what's up? Okay, I'm going to be talking to you guys today around making money matter for young Māori and Pacific people. But before I get into it, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about myself as it relates to some of the conversation I'm going to be having today. So I am firstly a proud father. I have a young tama who's 3, and I also have a lovely partner as well. And we live in our own home in our local community. I'm also, I guess my background's in sport. So being in sport, you get to hang around communities a lot. And as well, like as already mentioned, I run my own business and also lead an impact project trying to help local Māori and Pacific entrepreneurs in our area, which is East Auckland. So for today, I'm actually going to divide my presentation into 2 chapters. I thought I would do it because it was actually really hard trying to make it all one. So put it into 2 and you'll see why. Okay, so for our first chapter, it's around what I learned trying to help young Māori and Pacific people with money, okay? And I'm going to start with my own actual story. So right now, right here, I'm standing in front of my home. I was raised in a state home in my local area of East Auckland. I added the black and white for drama. But basically, I was raised in a community that's been traditionally low socioeconomic. So for me, when I say East Auckland, I'm talking about Glen Innes, Paramura, Point England, and also Mount Wellington. Okay, so those are the communities I come from. And for myself, you know, many of my whānau were on the benefit or trying their hard to work in factories and things alike, and trying to provide for us. So for me, seeing a lot of that and seeing a lot of the challenges we went through really inspired me to do something in this area, okay? And I just want to skip, there's a lot of stuff I could probably talk about my school years in high school and what I learned, but skipping ahead to here. So this is my whānau. Back in 2019, I heard about this thing globally that was happening called COVID. Didn't know it was going to come to our shores, if I had to be honest. I wasn't really knowing of that, but I really wanted to ask my whānau, if something was to go down, like, are we in a position to look after ourselves? And what kind of came back is that many of my whānau were in debt, had some challenges with money, and I kind of had learned a few things that I was like, hey, why don't we just get together and try to do something together first. So we did a thing called savings pool. I won't kind of go through the concept, but some of you guys may be familiar with it. And I kind of took the theory and added Tyrone's flavor and kind of created something for my whānau. So that kind of started a journey of trying to talk about money. I started talking about that in the community, and I was able to get resources to kind of do a podcast. Like Simran, it's #1 in my household. Yeah, definitely not 2 million downloads over here. But basically, it was talking to people in my community around what is money to them. And so I was able to interview 24 of people in my community, and yeah, very varied in terms of, you know, the stories around money and what we kind of grew up with. So through those stories, and similar to my whānau, I keep hearing about debt and this problem with debt. Fortunately, in our community, we had a local hackathon, which was called Hack Tāmaki. And if you're not too familiar with a hackathon, it's basically you get people from different industries to come together to solve a problem. And so I had this problem that, hey, many of our whānau are in debt. So this is my team that were, I was glad to actually get people to be in my team, because as these kind of go, you kind of just stand there like, oh, which team do you want to go to? So these were the lucky people that kind of joined up with. And basically, yeah, we created a solution over a weekend. And it was hard, fast. You know, we were trying to talk to different people to really kind of understand what we were wanting to really solve. But through that process, we kind of had to really look at who do we want to focus on. When we're talking about Māori and Pacific, you know, there's different demographics. And for us, we were just like, okay, what age group? Now, a lot of the stories we were hearing was that, you know, many of our whānau were not just in debt, younger in life, but also older. So we were like, do we go there or do we focus at a younger age, looking at schools? We decided to kind of look at this period, which was between 18 and 30s, okay? And that's still a big, age gap as well that we recognize, but it at least gave us some focus. So after that journey of going through that local hackathon, I applied to be a part of Kōkiri, and Kōkiri is a Māori accelerator to help startups that are in tech. So we kind of went through a 12-week program, really trying to unpack what we're trying to solve and provide a solution for that too. So basically everything at our local hackathon got thrown out the door because we needed to do more talking and conversations with people. So like what was already mentioned, we talked to over 250 young Māori Pacific people, ranging all the way from the top of the north down to South Island, and we just really wanted to hear. And I'm really hesitant to say quantitative and qualitative research. It wasn't really like that. We did a lot of surveys and we did a lot of talking on the phone or talking through Zooms. So that was kind of our journey, and through that, what we learned is that 80% of people that we talked to wanted to build savings, and also they wanted to build or own their own home. So I think that's nothing different to what we've been already hearing this last 2 days. But what really struck us was that almost 3 out of 4 people said that they lacked discipline. And for us, it was something that we kind of had as an option, but we didn't really know if people would actually take this up. And this became a bit of a cornerstone for what we kind of try to investigate. So we kind of came up with a problem statement that young Māori in Pacific are constantly one emergency away from financial despair. Okay, and this was reiterated through some of the stories that we were talking. We had about 70% said that they were employed, but that spectrum went from just getting by to people that were doing well. But both seemed to find themselves back in the same position, where if it became a tangi, became a whai lawe, things that were kind of happening on the go, like trying to, fix your car, it meant that, if you had to pay for it, it actually put you into financial despair. So we kind of wanted to understand, why is it constant? It's not just one random event. People seem to get back to the spot again and again and again. And then through further research, through further conversations, what we realized is our relationship with money. And what we're specifically talking about here when we're talking about relationship with money, there is what I guess some people call the financial IQ or the money IQ, which is like financial literacy and I guess financial capability. But when we're talking about relationship with money, we're talking about money EQ, so the emotional side of money. And I think this is why I wanted to, change the conversation a little, is that I think this conversation is not had enough. And I think there are people in this room and over the last day have mentioned, the things that we're doing in that. So we kind of found out there are ways to improve your relationship with money. But we actually wanted to create that through a digital app. So this is kind of our prototype that we're working with. And the whole goal was to help people, or help young Māori and Pacific people, improve their relationship with money. Now, how you do that? So one of the ways you can do is understanding the flow of money. Now, I'm not just talking about the inflow and outflow, your income and expenses, but the energy that is connected to that, and the idea of giving and receiving. Now, I didn't come up with this stuff, so I'm just kind of reiterating, but it does apply to even my own life. But last night, it was actually quite funny. At the networking events, we were kind of bringing up stories of our own kind of money stories. And one of the things that came up, people were talking about them and whānau that they knew. But basically, we know so many people that give. And then when you kind of go to pay them back, oh, no, I'm all good. I don't need to take that. Vice versa, we got the other side of our whānau that are like, don't give, and then receive, okay? But in that kind of exchange that is happening, if we are not trying to look at our kind of energy within that, we're creating blockages for ourselves when we're thinking about money, okay? Another one is practicing gratitude. Now, I'm always mindful of bringing this up because this sounds really probably unsincere to some of the situations that, our whānau are going through. But the whole idea is not to say that, our situations are necessarily great for us externally, but it's this idea that if we can be in a place of enough, then we can see the opportunities that exist for ourselves. And that is not necessarily easy. So I don't put this up to, shame and judge anyone that can't do this. It's the idea that if we can find a place in ourselves to be grateful for something, then when we look around, I look around this room and I'm like, oh yeah, that person's at the bank, cool, I can talk to that person about opportunities, and also this person's doing financial mentoring, I've got people that, I need some support. So really it's about practicing gratitude, and we wanted to provide something in a way to do that. And then also healing our stories around money, okay? Hands up, how many of you guys have heard the whole word of the money is root of all evil, How many of you heard that? Money doesn't grow on trees. How many of you heard that? Also, how many of you guys still turn off the lights because mum and dad said that you got to turn off the lights when you go out? All right, we've all got a money story, and we've been talking about that for the last 2 days, right? And I think it's about making sure that we can actually go through that, because for some of us, there's trauma that exists, and there's that trauma unmet, like I was mentioning before, that shaky foundations, and if you're trying to build financial literacy on top of that, you're always going to go back anyway, okay? So the reason for us and the reason why we wanted to do this was all about improving decision making, because like what was mentioned yesterday too, that we like to think that we're logical, but usually we're emotional when we make decisions. So by improving our relationship with money, the whole goal is to hopefully improve when it comes to decision making, but also secondly is to be able to see opportunity. Okay, and I think for myself, being Māori and Pacific, I can't say young, I'm kind of creeping out of that kind of category at the moment. But being able to see opportunity because of the abundance that exists in front of us, okay? So what I kind of wanted to leave on this chapter 1 is that without improving people's relationship with money, we are setting people up to fail, okay? And I really wanted to kind of say that today. So, on to chapter 2. And this is really around what I learned about the ecosystem that is trying to help Māori and Pacific young people with money. Now, kind of through Kōkiri journey and also post it, I realized I know nothing about this financial sector. I know a lot about the community side, or around my own perspective anyway, but I kind of needed to learn from different people. So I went and talked to different people, banks, advisors, people in different organizations, and also playing in the fintech space. I realized I probably didn't get to everyone because there's many people I've never met here before, so just putting it out there that, obviously there's probably more work I could have done in this space. But I realized I was a baby. Like, I actually didn't have connections, didn't have networks. I was starting to establish them, but kind of, was still starting my own journey, trying to understand the financial sector. So I kind of had a decision to make. I had to kind of realize I've got a family, I've got a mortgage, I've got a business that's actually growing, and I've got this prototype. So I was kind of considering, what do I need to do with my life? Like, where am I going to go with this? So I decided to put my journey as a tech entrepreneur on hold. And I say on hold because it's something that really, for me, I want to do. But understanding the venture capitalist world, understanding investment, was like, maybe this isn't the right decision for right now. But when I build my business, build the capital, build the relationship, it may be something that I come back to. So this is what I did. I doubled down on my business. Like what was already mentioned, we have a local hub now in our community, and we help Māori and Pacific entrepreneurs that are from our local area come together and do stuff around that. We also have rangatahi come through our space as well that are wanting to start their own business, and we have a collective, so there are some of our business owners there that we kind of work with. So how does this all relate? So there's one person in this kind of world of, I guess, thought leaders. His name is Ken Honda, and he's really big on this whole idea of relationship with money. I happened to be listening to some of his content at the time, and he said this: your anxiety is not about money, it's about your future. And what he really meant about that is that, when it comes down to it, what we're anxious about is how we're going to pay rent, how we're going to pay food, how we're going to pay for power, and for myself, how am I going to do all of that while trying to be an entrepreneur? Okay, but he said, but what if we knew someone that could help? Would you feel less anxious? I think the answer is obvious. If you knew that you had a friend, you knew that you had family, you knew that the system could help you, you would feel a lot less anxious, right? So for me, that's kind of why I was like, that's probably why I didn't take on the journey. Not because of the risk, like jumping into business in general, it's just a risk in itself. But I realized I didn't have the relationships, and I didn't really have, or had built the trust for myself to kind of thrive in that space. So I kind of wanted to ask, what relationship do young Māori and Pacific people have with others that are supposed to help them with money? And when we talk about relationship or relationships, it's about building that trust. And there's been many conversations already about, we're trying to engage and we're trying to figure out how to engage, but, we're not there yet, which is a fair journey. And I think, when we talk about trust and we talk about young people, it doesn't take you long to find out what young people don't trust. And it's easy as looking on social media, but again, I advise don't get all your facts from social media. But we can see, and I think just what Sim was saying in her presentation as well, right? But I think this generation is a lot more conscious around what they want to be a part of and what they want to put their money to, okay? But also talking to young people, you'll find, what people trust and don't trust, okay? So part of what I wanted to talk today, just through our own engagements, is how can you create trust with young Māori and Pacific people? And the first thing I want to say, we're similar but not the same. Okay, I think it's really important, especially talking about Joe Gamble's work yesterday, kind of really highlighted that there is other segmentations towards that we should be operating with. But I would just want to break down even Pacific. When you think about Pacific, you've got Tongan, you've got Samoan, you've got Cook Island, okay? They've all got their own cultural practices. They got their own experiences. So for me, being Cook Island, I had no idea what my Samoan friends were going through when I was growing up. Yes, we're Pacific, but we don't all know the same things, okay? So I say similar, but not the same. And you can break down that down into ages, down into where we're from, people that live in rural areas compared to living in urban areas. There's a lot of similarities, but we're not the same. I think secondly, this is probably obvious, but peer culture is heavily influential, okay? I think this is really important to kind of acknowledge, and I think what was being mentioned today also is that, trying to get to communities, obviously, they're hanging out with their peers. Doesn't mean if you are older and experienced, you can't talk to them. It just means that they're probably highly likely to get their, knowledge and facts and conversations through their peers. So I think it's about how do you create supportive environments so those peers can have those conversations, right? And then I think third, should be an obvious one, but I kind of find it interesting that this is not obvious. Be hopeful. I think sometimes it's easy to young people don't know what they don't know and all of that kind of jazz, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes, and I think it was really mentioned in the panel yesterday, that young people are trying to find other ways to figure it out because they have to. And I think as an organization, and I know I might be preaching to the choir a little bit here, but if we are not hopeful, obviously, why would a young person want to interact with yourself? And I think this all comes under an umbrella, which I call, you just have to care. That's all it is. How do you show care? And I think this is one of the, pillars for a lot of stuff that I've kind of been trying to understand and do. And, sometimes I don't get it right. But I think, if we really think about care, there's a spectrum of caring, okay? They can go from, having that conversation. I've actually heard from people that work in banks too that obviously you guys work in a position where there's competition. But sometimes, when someone comes to you, you may not be able to help them, but you should be referring them. And that for us as Māori and Pacific people, that's just natural. If I can't help you, hey, the auntie might be able to do something and maybe show you the way, okay? But for some people, and we talk to young people and they say the same thing, sometimes they just go, thank you, see you later. Okay, and that's that care part that I'm talking about. But the truth is, caring is more work. And I think that's the question I want to leave with you. Do you want to do the more work? And I know, again, I'm preaching to the choir for some of you, but I think it's really important to kind of put this out there that if you do want to care, it does take more work, okay? And I think, it shouldn't be work because if you do want to reach the outcomes and reach what you're trying to do, this should really be a part of what you're doing anyway, okay? So yeah, takeaway one, again, myself, I'm personally interested in financial literacy and also building wealth in general. But without improving people's relationship with money, we are setting people up to fail. And the takeaway two here is care. Simple as that. Thank you.
Tyrone, that's great. It's such a refreshing and, I was going to say simple. I don't mean that. It gets to the heart of what we're talking about here over these couple of days. I have some questions for you. The first one here is, what would you like to see the sector doing more of to support Māori and Pacifica?
I think it's great. Oh, if the last slide was up, care. I think there's a lot of, strategy stuff and tactical. And to be honest, I don't fully know the sector to really say a perfect answer to it, but I think it really revolves around that care. So that's kind of what I would say to the answer.
This is an interesting question. What are the cultural views or cultural approaches to paying off debt versus savings, especially toward cultural contributions?
Oh, that's a tough question, to be honest, to ask. I think that's an individual's journey and what they want to do. I think I just want to say this, and I'm happy to be challenged after this conversation, but I'm a big believer that some of our people are in debt, and trying to help them out of debt is what we should be doing. But also when you think about building wealth, taking on the right type of debt actually can get you there too. So I think one of the challenges trying to talk to not just young people, but also Māori and Pacific people is that the idea that debt's not always bad. There are ways to actually build wealth, and I think sometimes it gets lumped in together, and that kind of creates challenges in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Young people trying to get ahead quickly opt for crypto and NFTs. How do you address this?
Well, I'm one of them. And I say that I don't jump quickly. I actually go with some around here that, for me, there are projects that I'm looking at long term. And really, it actually goes back to Pasi's corridor as well. I'm looking at the ones that are building communities and those that are going to sustain for a longer time. But I think, again, this comes back to the relationship with money stuff. The reason why they're doing it is because, well, A, there is some problematic stuff that you can't build wealth like you could maybe 20, 30 years ago. But also people are looking for other opportunities. And obviously, if your relationship with money is not the greatest, you're going to make some fast and short decisions.
You talked about putting your tech career on hold. What is your business now?
Oh, should have mentioned that, right? So my business is in the flow state, so we help service businesses grow. So previous to doing the business I'm in now, I used to run a content agency called No 6. So we used to do videos for social organizations and help them do all their content. And then I kind of realized through that journey, hey, we learned a lot of stuff. I'm connecting with a lot of people that are in trades, running their own agencies. I can help you grow. So that's the work I'm doing now.
Yeah, great. What support would help you and others to reach a mission of Māori wealth?
Oh, that's actually real. I'm thankful for that question, actually, because I had a really great conversation with a few people last night. So many of us kind of got together, and I think there's an array of things. I don't think there's one silver bullet like was mentioned today, but I do think that there's an opportunity with the amount of fin influencers, if we want to call it that are Māori and Pacific and are doing stuff online, to bring them together and have an event like this. And I think, part of the challenge there is putting resources into that. So I think that's just not the silver bullet, but I think there's more opportunity now than ever to bring people together and actually have that conversation. And again, it goes back to that representation, And what great would it be to actually see a room full of young Māori Pacific talking about money?
Yeah, fantastic. A question that has been asked obviously by one person, but several people support this question, which is, I'm local, how can I help with the work you do?
Yo, come for a chat, slide in DMs. We'll have a conversation.
Fantastic. Excellent. And this will be the last question. Do you think that the mindset of not wanting a handout blocks Māori parents from being in opportunities to learn? Would a campaign help shift this block?
Ooh. For myself, I kind of don't like this whole idea of there's handouts. I get it, but for myself, I've had privilege, Like I said, my family came from being on the benefit. I don't know what my life would have been if we didn't have some of the opportunities that we've had in our country. But in saying that, for me, that's why I'm talking about practicing gratitude, because I think there's a lot more chance for us to, if we can be from enough, we can actually see other opportunities for ourselves. So in one way I'm saying, I don't like this idea of handout culture, because I wouldn't probably be here talking to you guys unless I had some support through my whānau. But at the same time, I think there's things that we can do for ourselves. And there might be things that we need to kind of grow and evolve to get there.
Tyrone, thank you so much. A huge round of applause. Ngā mihi ki a koe.